All right, let me make sure this is working. Hello. Welcome to the Hot Shop. We're just coming back from lunch, so we're getting started here. Today in the Hot Shop, we have the Museum of Glass team, and we also have artist John Kiley. John Kiley is the one in the black shirt over there. We're making his work today. He has a commission that he's doing an installation where he has to make a bunch of pieces. So we're trying to make a bunch of those pieces today. They're gonna end up looking like this. So this is a finished one. It's transparent, so when you shine light through it, it shines the light through the colored glass and makes the reflection that color. So we're making a bunch of these, a bunch of different colors. That way when they get installed on a wall, you shine the light through them and they cast really beautiful shadows. So we need to make about 50 of these. So today we've just been making as many as we can. So we're getting back into it after lunch. The way this is made is you get two separate bubbles. So we've got our two separate bubbles over there. They're gonna blow them up and then smush them together to make this part in the middle. And it'll end up looking like a sphere when we put it away. But then once it comes out of the annealing oven, which is where the glass cools, once it's cold, we take it out, we take it to the cold shop. So this is the hot shop, where the glass is hot. The cold shop is where the glass is cold. You can grind it, polish it, cut it. So we're gonna take it to a saw and cut the sides of the bubble off, leaving the part in the middle to make this shape, this sculpture. And we're making a bunch of these that are gonna get installed all together to make our piece. So there's a couple of examples over here too. So that's what we're working towards. When we put them away, they're gonna be spheres, and then we'll cut the sides away. But we have to make the pieces, let them cool down, and then cut the pieces away from the final thing. So they're working with the hot glass today. These are the two bubbles that they're gonna smush together later. We're just getting back from lunch, so we got a ways to go before we smush them together. But glass blowing is like a team sport. There's a lot of moving parts. So we got our two separate parts. Gabe is the one over there getting glass out of our furnace. That furnace holds about 1,000 pounds of clear molten glass. It sits in there at 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So when Gabe comes out of there, you'll see we've got a fresh layer of clear glass on top of this bubble. We also add color by using cold bars of colored glass. So all the glass in the furnace is clear. We add the color to it by using these. So this is a bar of transparent red, or orangish. Scarlet is what the label says. We go to the glass color and supply store and we buy these. So John Kiley bought a bunch of color. He brought it here to use. We buy these as solid cold bars, so we have to preheat these before we can add them to the clear molten glass. So all of our color that we're using today is in this big box. This is called a garage. That's where you park pieces of your piece while you're working on it. So we got all our color bar in there. They pick up the chunks as they're gonna use them, and they add them to the clear glass after it's taken out of the furnace. So adding the color to the glass is called a color overlay. You literally take the colored glass, melt it, and lay it over a clear bubble. I believe we have a color overlay video. If we could play that video to give you guys a better visual of how this happens. Let's see if we can get that video up there. But glass blowing is essentially a layering process. So we add a layer of color. You encase it in clear glass, blow it out, you could add another layer. But if you cut the glass down the middle, it looks like a sandwich of layered bits. So we'll see if they can find that video to have it play in just a minute to show you how that color is added. But this is what it looks like when it starts. Just bars of color. We're using transparent colors today, and all the transparent bars look really dark. But if you hold them in the light, you can see the reflection of it, like on my fingers, is blue. I don't know if you can see it from that angle. But it reflects blue, like down there. So this is transparent blue. And then, of course, they all have labels on them, so that's how you know what they are. But there's chemists who specialize in glass color, and they make the colors for us. We buy it and then make stuff out of it. So we don't mix the colors ourselves. But you can see over there, John Kiley's got a big bubble with color on it. We're blowing the bubble right now through the blowpipe, which is the big metal straw that the glass is on. And then we have Ben in the middle also doing the same thing with another team. So they're trying to line up their temperature and timing so that we can stick these two bubbles together. We still got a bit of ways to go before that part happens, but when they're ready to stick the glass together, they'll get both of them really hot, and hot glass sticks to hot glass. So they literally will take them and just mash them together. And they'll stick and they'll make this little membrane that forms in the middle. So we're working on two separate pieces that will eventually get joined together. You might not be able to hear them because there's music and it's loud in here, but the team, everybody's all communicating with each other about what's happening, what they're going to do next, all of that. So the person sitting down is telling the other person when to blow air into the pipe, when to stop blowing air into the pipe, and it's really a team effort. But there's also these big barrels of fire. You'll see them stand up and put the glass into those big barrels. Those are called reheating chambers. When you work with molten glass, it has to be within a specific window of temperature. So the longer it's out here, the colder it's getting. If it gets too cold, it will break. So we have to heat it back up to get it back into that window of temperature so that it doesn't break. If it gets too cold, it breaks. If it gets too hot, it's just too molten. It moves around too much and you can't control it. So we're trying to keep it anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. In the furnace, it sits at 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes it easier to scoop out. It's like getting honey out of a jar with a stick. But as it gets colder, it gets stiffer until eventually it freezes into place. So we reheat the glass to get it to be more molten and more malleable. Right now, Ben is drilling a hole through the bottom of this bubble. It's kind of an abstract part of the process, but it's really all physics. We're going to attach another hollow tube on the end where he just drilled that hole in and break this piece off the pipe that's on right now. The side that's attached to the pipe is the part that's going to get attached to the other bubble. So once these both are transferred to different pipes and stuck together, this one has to have that hole on the other end so that the air has somewhere to go when we're smushing the other bubble onto it. So there's a lot of physics in glass blowing. There's a lot of chemistry behind the making of the color and the glass itself. But we're getting ready to do what's called a punty transfer here at the middle bench. They did one over there already. They did it pretty quick, but they're going to do a punty transfer here at the middle. They need to flip the piece around so that we can access the other side of it. So we got to take a different rod, attach it where he just drilled the hole into that, and then break it off the pipe that it's on right now. That will effectively flip the piece around. That way we have access to the top. So they're just waiting for that punty. We've got the punty over here. The punty transfer, you have to do the temperature and timing just right. A lot of glass blowing is about layering and temperature and timing. So we have a punty, which is, there's a lot of different ways to make punties depending on what you're using it for. But the one we're using is hollow. So we're just attaching another straw to this side. And inside where that punty's connected is the hole that we drilled. So when we break the piece off the pipe, we'll flip it around, but we'll still be able to blow into it. But to break it off the other pipe, we're going to utilize thermal shock. Normally you don't want the glass to crack, but to get it off the other pipe, you crack it on purpose with a drop of water, and then you tap the pipe, and the piece breaks on the weak spot where you put that drop of water. You have to do that at the right temperature and right timing or it doesn't work. But now they flipped it around. It's on a blowpipe still. There's that hole drilled into the bubble where it's attached to the pipe. And now they can blow through that. When they squish the other bubble on there, the air that's getting displaced has somewhere to go. This other bubble on the far right, they're just getting that into the right shape while it's attached to a solid punty. So they'll attach that one to this one at the middle, and then they'll break the punty off of the bubble that's on the far right when they're attached together. But while they're working on these two pieces at the bench, you can see Sarah here in the blue shirt is getting a bubble ready for the next color overlay, which I guess we couldn't get that video up there to play, but we're gonna do a color overlay on that little bubble. So she got the bubble of clear glass ready. Emily is the one in the brown over there. She's getting the color ready to overlay onto that clear bubble. And that'll be the next piece that we'll make when they finish this one with these two big bubbles that are already almost pretty ready to get stuck together. Pretty close. They're just trying to line up their temperature and timing to stick them together. But they'll do that here at the middle bench. If you don't have a good view of the bench from where you're sitting, the camera is also showing the middle bench, so you can see it there too. So they're getting ready to stick these two bubbles together. Ben here at the center, and then John Kiley on the far right. They'll meet at the middle bench. They'll stick the bubbles together. And gravity always wants to pull the glass down. So while they're sticking the glass together, they're gonna have to roll the pipes in unison together. So there'll be a lot going on right there. They'll be talking to each other, rotating the pipes, lining up the temperature and timing so they can break the bubble off of that rod and attach it to the middle one. So they're just about ready to do that. Also, Emily and Sarah over here are gonna do their color overlay for the next one. So if you watch Emily in the brown, she'll bring out that rod that has a bit of that color bar. This, that she's picked up and melted in the fire so that it's molten and moving around. It'll get put on top of that clear bubble and then smushed down the sides. But here they're sticking the two bubbles together in the middle, lining up the rotations of the pipes to go in unison. And then once it's attached, they'll break it off the pipe that John is holding on the right side. And then the bubbles will stay attached on this main pipe and they'll finish up the shape. So now they're attached. We've got a big sphere with this little membrane stuck together in the middle. The last thing they need to do to that is cut off the sides to make it look like this. But the glass has to be cold to do that part. So they're gonna put this away into what's called the annealing oven. It's that big black box over there. The glass has to cool down slowly. If the glass gets too cold too fast, it breaks. So it has to go through the annealing process, which is the slow cooling process of the glass. It'll stay in that box, which will systematically cool it down overnight. Once it cools down, we can cut off the sides to make this. They've got a bunch of these pieces in the annealer right now. He needs to make about 50 of these for an installation he has coming up soon. So you can see there can be quite a lot going on when you start blowing glass with a team of people. So they're working on this piece. We've also got the next one getting worked on. So as soon as this one gets put into the annealer, they can just jump into the next one and do it all again. Right now they got to shape this one up a little bit more before they take it off the pipe. So Ben here got a little bit of clear glass that they're going to attach to the bottom of this piece. Once it's attached, they'll remove the piece from the pipe and put it into the annealer. We have Trent over there who's getting all of the gear ready to load the piece away into the annealer. The inside of the annealer is about 950 degrees Fahrenheit. So Trent has to put the top half of his body into that box to load the piece. So he's putting on all the protective gear to be able to do that. We have Kevlar gloves, which is a heat-resistant material that he'll be wearing. That will allow him to grab the piece with those gloves and load it into the annealer. And it'll stay in the annealer until it cools down all the way. So there's a computer attached to the annealer that will systematically lower the temperature. They're keeping track of how many they've made by just writing it on there. So this piece at the center bench is just about done. They'll have to get it off of the pipe. So they'll break it off the pipe on that little connection point. And then they can take it into the cold shop, which is where you can work on the glass when it's cold. This is the hot shop where you work on the glass when it's hot. They'll take it into the cold shop where they can grind it and polish it and cut it. So they'll cut it up to look like this. This will get mounted onto the wall, and it'll create a big installation. There'll be about 50 of these all lined up. And when light shines through transparent glass, it creates a colorful shadow. So it'll be really beautiful shadows all over the wall. If we could show some of John Kiley's work up on the screen, please. So here's some examples of some of his other work. But let's give him a hand for a beautiful finished piece. Another one in the box. On to the next one. But these images also show you some of his other work. These are very small versions of what they're showing up there. But John Kiley, his work has been exhibited in galleries and museums all over the world, a lot of different countries. He's worked and demonstrated in Finland, Ireland, Mexico, Italy, Japan, Bulgaria, China, Australia, Brazil, and Turkey. So he's been all over the place. His work's been all over the place. He's originally from Seattle. But he uses these geometric forms for his glass sculptures. In his spherical forms, the juxtaposed colors and carved optic passageways create this separation of space, which allows the viewer to peer in and through the form. If you see some of the examples here, so he got a commission to make an installation of a bunch of these little pieces all together. So the Museum of Glass team is helping him make all these things. Glass blowing is really a team sport because there's, as you can see, there's a lot of moving parts. It takes a team. All right, so we're starting another one. We got our two separate pieces that will get blown into bubbles and then eventually smashed together. So if you missed the beginning of the last one, they're doing it all again. You see it again. And they're using a variety of different colors. When the glass is hot, all the colors look orange. but they're going to be a bunch of different colors when they cool down, similar to those. All the colors when they're hot look orange because of the temperature, and all the transparent colors when they're cold all just look like bars of black glass. But that's because the color is all very condensed. If you hold it up in the light, you can see it's reflecting like a blue color on my skin a little bit. They also have labels, so you don't have to guess. When we buy them, they have little labels that tell you what color they are. But this is all of his color that he's using today, all the pieces that he already has preheating inside this box. If you took this bar and just put it straight into this fire that's 2200 degrees Fahrenheit, going from cold to that hot that fast will make this explode from temperature shock. So you have to preheat the color before you can just take it and use it and melt it. So all the colors preheating in that box, it's about 1000 degrees in there. That way when they take it and put it into the 2000 degree reheating chamber, it doesn't explode. So in the furnace is just a big bowl that holds about 1,000 pounds of molten clear glass. Sometimes when you scoop the glass out of there, you can get a bubble trapped inside of it. So John Kiley and his team over there are using some shears to pick the bubbles out and cut them off. When glass is hot enough, you can cut through it with some glass cutting scissors called shears. So he's using these extra long ones to pick the bubble out and then cut it off. So that's what he was just doing over there. You can see up on the screen. Now they're melting that cut mark, and then he'll start to blow the bubble into a big ball. So you might not be able to see the bubble inside there because there's layers of glass and color that are covering it up, but there's a bubble in there. They'll start blowing through the pipe to inflate the glass, and you'll see it look like it's growing. It's stretching and getting bigger. The glass is stretching and getting thinner. So you don't want to blow it up too thin. And for anyone that just joined us recently, we also have a little bit about John Kiley, I can tell you, and we also have some videos that explain a little bit more about him. But I'll give you a quick summary of our artist today, John Kiley. He uses primary geometric forms as the architecture for his glass sculptures. In his spherical forms, juxtaposed colors and carved optic passageways create a separation of space, which allows the viewer to peer in and through the form. John's work has been exhibited at galleries and museums all over the world. He's been a visiting instructor at the National College of Art and Design in Dublin, Ireland, the Bezalel Academy of Art and Design in Jerusalem, Israel, the Pittsburgh Glass Center and Pratt Fine Arts Center in Seattle. He's worked and demonstrated in multiple countries, a handful of those being Finland, Mexico, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Bulgaria, China, Australia, Brazil, and Turkey. So he's a pretty well-known glass artist and instructor who's been all around the world teaching and demonstrating his work. If we have that artist video ready, could we play that, please?
My name is John Kiley. I'm from Seattle, Washington. Born and raised, fourth generation. So I have two pieces here today. This one right here was actually made at the Museum of Glass in 2008, June of 2008. One of the themes that is common in my work is this membrane between two different sections. Sometimes there'll be a passageway through the membrane to the other side, and sometimes it'll just be solid. The idea behind this work is exploring this idea of connection and separation. I use glass to describe the connection and the separation because of the transparency of the material. You can see through from one side to another. You'll rarely see opaque colors used in my work, and that's because it's important for me for there to be transparency in the form. The form is not just about the exterior, but it's about what's going on in the inside too. Part of what I intend to do with the residency is push the scale, try to make these a bit larger, which is only possible with a facility like the Museum of Glass and with a big skilled team, and also increase the number of sections. Right now, I've made them up to 3 sections, and I hope to experiment with making them up to 4 or 5 sections, and then cutting away perhaps the sides and creating whole new forms. Again, still rooted in the sphere and still rooted in the connectedness and separation, but totally different. It's really important as an artist to have an environment to be able to come and work in where you can experiment and you can push new things without financial consequences. As a glass artist in particular, for me to make my work outside of a facility like the Museum of Glass runs up to $2,000 a day. So there's pressure to produce in a situation like that. With a residency like the Museum of Glass offers, you can come in, you can just focus on your ideas, you can focus on making your art, and there are no other places where that's possible. And looking forward to a great week.
So that video gives you a better idea of our artist today. It even gave you a little preview of what's about to happen. They're going to smush those two bubbles together. And we're getting close to that part of the process. Temperature and timing are two of the most important parts of glass blowing, so they have to line up the temperature and timing of the two separate pieces so that they can successfully join them together. So they're working on getting it the right shape as well as the right temperature. What's going on? So these two are getting ready to join those two bubbles together. Meanwhile, Sarah in the blue shirt and Gabe in the black hat are getting the next one ready to go. Getting everything started for this piece that we're going to do once they finish the one they're working on now. They want to get as many made today as they can, so team effort here is making it sort of like an assembly line. They're getting the next one started, building up those layers. Glass blowing is essentially about building up layers. So they're getting the first few layers done. That way they can pass them on and do it again. So here we go. They're going to smush the bubbles together and then turn the pipes in unison. Once it's the right shape and they have it how they want it, they'll remove the bubble from John's pipe on the right by breaking that connection, and then they'll shape that up into a sphere. Once the glass is cold, they'll cut the sides of the sphere off to make one of these. Bunch of different colors. They need to make 50 of these for an installation, so they're making as many as they can today, one at a time. But now you can see that inside of those two bubbles being smushed together has created that sort of membrane, like he mentioned in his video. It creates that pattern inside. And since it's all transparent colors, you can rotate it around and get different perspectives, different viewpoints of the piece. But on the far right side of this studio, those two, that's Emily and Sarah, they're going to do what's called a color overlay. So they're adding the layer of color for the next piece. This is what the color looks like when you start these pieces on the table. So the clear glass is already molten. The colored glass is these solid cold bars of glass. So you have to preheat these and then melt them down into the same temperature as the clear glass. So Emily in the brown is melting one of the bars. She'll bring it over to Sarah, who will cut it off there, adding it to her clear bubble, and then she'll smush it down the side so that there's a layer of color around the whole bubble. So she's cutting it with shears. Now she's got that little blob of color. She's gonna smush it down the sides, same way as how you would like pull up a sock. You're gonna smush it all the way down the sides so that the color goes all the way around the whole bubble. Then they can blow it out and it will have the layer of color like this one. The color comes from different metal oxides. So chemists make them and we buy them at the store like this. But they're finishing up this sphere in the middle bench. They're just adding a little piece to the bottom of it. They're going to take this off the blowpipe and put it into that big box over there called the annealing oven. Trent is getting geared up to load the piece away into the annealing oven. The annealer sits at 950 degrees, so he's got to put on some protective layers because he's going to have to physically take the piece and put it inside the oven. So he's got some layers. He's putting on some Kevlar gloves, which is a heat-resistant material. That way they can break the piece off the pipe and carry it over to the annealer to set it inside. It will cool down slowly overnight. Once it's cold, they can cut it like this. You can take the glass into the cold shop, which is where you work with the glass when it's cold, grinding, polishing, and cutting the glass. The hot shop, where we are now, is where you work with the glass when it's hot. Cold shop is where you work on it when it's cold. So we're doing the hot shop portion today. They'll do the cold shop portion once the piece is cooled down in the annealer. If the glass gets too cold too fast, it breaks. So they cool it down systematically in that box. That way it doesn't break. That process is called annealing. So they broke it off the pipe just now. They used thermal shock to their advantage. If you put a drop of water on the glass, it creates a crack. You tap on the pipe, the vibrations go into the crack and break the piece on that spot. So that's how they got it off the pipe. It's in the annealer now, so let's give the team a big round of applause for a successful piece. And on to the next one. Everything we've made so far today is inside that annealer. We're going to put as many as we can in there. At the end of the day is when we'll start the program that will systematically cool down the temperature inside the box. You can see we have multiple annealers in here because sometimes the annealing process can last a couple days. The thicker the glass is, the longer it needs to anneal. These pieces aren't super thick, but I'm going to guess they need to be in there for at least 1 day. So we have multiple annealers so that they can alternate which one they're using depending on which ones are going and which ones are available. So now the team's taking a quick little water break, and then they will start up working on this next one. So right now the team is working on making these two separate bits into nice spheres. They're gonna blow two big bubbles, and then they're gonna join those two bubbles together. So they're gonna squish them together. This is the end product that we're going for. So they're gonna squish the two bubbles together to make a sphere, and then once the glass is cold, they'll cut the sides of the sphere off to reveal the inside part where they smush the glass together. This is gonna be an installation of a bunch of pieces. So they need to make a bunch of these individual pieces, and they'll get attached to a wall. When you shine light through a transparent glass, it reflects that color onto the surface. So they'll make a bunch of these transparent shapes, and light will shine through it, and it will cast these beautiful shadows all over the wall for the piece. So today they're just trying to make as many of these as they can, kind of in an assembly line type of thing. So the two main benches here, the one in the middle and the one on the right, those are the two that are going to be putting the bubbles together. The other team over here, and a few of them on that side, are going to be getting the next bubbles ready for the next piece while they finish up these two bubbles for this piece. So they're kind of multitasking, a lot of moving parts. They're trying to make as many of these in a day as they can. So right now, there's two separate teams blowing up two separate bubbles. Eventually, we'll have those two bubbles squished together to make one piece. So glass blowing is all about temperature and timing. The two teams are trying to line up their temperature and timing together so that they can meet in the middle and smush both pieces together. It'll be a couple minutes until we get to that part, but we still got a couple more things to do. They're working on blowing these bubbles out right now. So the person sitting at the bench is telling the person on the mouthpiece end of the pipe when to blow into the pipe and when to stop blowing, and that inflates the glass. It stretches the glass, makes it take up more space. So the glass is getting thinner the bigger you blow it up. So they don't want to blow it up too big or the glass will be too thin. So they're trying to work on it little by little, making it bigger until it's the right shape, the right thickness, and the right temperature. Can we go ahead and show some of John Kiley's work up on the screen? So he makes all different kinds of these similar shapes, geometric forms, and things like that. In his forms, the juxtaposed colors and carved optic passageways create a separation of space, which allows the viewer to peer through and into the form. He uses transparent colors so that you can see the different layers and the depth and the shape of all of these sculptures. A few examples of his work. You can see the shadow that is cast on this piece with the transparent colors creates that beautiful color on the white surface. So that's what we're going for, is making a bunch of these so that they create those beautiful shadows on the wall. We'll have about 50 of these attached to the wall, all together in like a cluster. So that is a bigger version of what we're doing today. We're making smaller pieces that are all going to go together. That's what they'll look like on the wall, just like that. So that's the end goal. We're making all the pieces that get attached to the wall that look like that. Also, John Kiley just got awarded the lifetime membership to the Glass Art Society, which is a very big honor. Yeah. So for this bubble, the opening of the piece is attached to the blowpipe, and we need access to the opening. So they're going to break it off the blowpipe by putting water on it, which creates a crack, tap on the pipe and it breaks that crack into a full break point, which separates the piece from the pipe and flips it around, so now we can access that bubble. When we stick the pieces together, the opening is going to be that middle part. So they flip this one around, they flip the other one around. Now the openings are on the outside of the pipe. They're going to smush those openings together. They just got to line up their temperature, their timing, and their shape. So we're getting close to getting to the point where they're going to join these two bubbles together. They did break them off the pipe, so the spot where it broke is a little bit jagged. They're just got to clean up that edge on both of the bubbles, and then they'll get them hot, smush them together. That will be done at this center bench. So if you don't have a good view from where you're sitting, you can always look up at the screen, and that's showing this center bench where they'll be sticking the bubbles together. But we're getting close. So we're getting ready to smush the bubbles together. Gravity always wants to pull the glass to the ground, so they have to keep the pipes turning, and they have to turn them in unison so they don't twist or distort this shape. So they're communicating how fast or how slow to turn the pipes. They're blowing air into it to help get that shape right. Once it's good, they're going to remove it from the punty that John is holding on the far right side. And then both bubbles will stay attached. And now we have our joined pieces. We just got to clean up the shape, get it into a more spherical shape, and then they can take it off the pipe. If the glass gets too cold too fast, it will break. So we have to put it into that annealing oven, which will cool it down slowly. Once it's cold, we'll take it out and we'll cut the sides of the bubble off to make the shape. And then we'll have a collection of these that will all get attached to the wall. When the light shines through it, it will create this beautiful reflection on the white wall of the color of whatever the color is on the glass. You make it all different colors. This one is purple, so it reflects purple on the white surface. He'll have a bunch of them, so there'll be a different colors reflection all over the wall, all together in this cluster, in a nice installation of a bunch of these pieces. So that one has two colors on it, so it'll look more like these ones over here, where it's half and half. And the two colors smashed in the middle overlap to look like a third color. Pretty cool effect. So they'll get it off the blowpipe the same way they got it off the punties. They will shock and break that connection. They're adding a little piece on the bottom here first. That is clear glass. It just looks orange because it's fresh out of the furnace, which is about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's glowing orange because it's radiating that heat and that energy which emits light. So it looks like it's orange and glowing, but that is just hot, clear glass. As it cools, it will look more clear. But Trent over there is getting geared up to load the piece away into the annealing oven. Glass goes through a molecular change as it cools, and that has to happen in a controlled environment. So basically, the glass has to cool down slowly or it will shatter. So we're going to put this into the oven where it will cool down, which sounds backwards, but the oven is about 950 degrees right now. We'll start the program that will start at 950 degrees and systematically cool the glass down slowly over about 24 hours. That way it has time to dissipate all the heat without getting stressed and breaking. Once it's finished cooling down, they'll take the sphere and they'll cut the two sides of it off to make something like this. So we're lining up the temperature, making sure that Trent has his Kevlar gloves on. He's going to grab the piece with that heat-resistant material and walk it over to the annealer. He's putting on all of that protective gear because he has to actually physically go into the oven and put the piece down. And it's 950 degrees in the oven. So he's got a face shield, a jacket, Kevlar gloves, a hoodie, covering up all his skin so that he can put himself into a 950-degree oven without getting burned. So the gloves he's wearing are Kevlar, which is a heat-resistant material. So he will carry the piece in those gloves. The piece is about 1,000 degrees right now, so he'll be holding a 1,000-degree glass, putting it into a 950-degree oven with those gloves. And again, temperature and timing is the most important part of glass blowing, so they're waiting for it to be the right temperature. They got it off the pipe. They're just melting the sharp edge where they broke it. And let's give the team a big round of applause for another piece in the box. Awesome. And like I was saying, they just want to make as many of these as they can. So on to the next one. They're going to do that all again. So we've got the two separate bubbles. They're going to blow them up and then attach them and do that again and again until 5 o'clock. I'll use this so I'm not yelling at you. But they're making a bunch of pieces for an installation. So they're smushing two bubbles together to create this part in the middle. And then once the glass is cold, they're going to cut the sides of it off and attach a thing to mount it to the wall. So they're making a bunch of these because it's going to be an installation. I'll show you an example of what it's going to look like. So they're going to mount these all on a white wall and shine a light on it. So these are transparent colors. When you shine a light on it, it creates this really cool optical, or this really cool pattern visually on the white surface. So they're making a bunch of these different colors, similar to those ones there. They're making a bunch of different colors. These are all going to get mounted on the wall and have a light shining on them to create that visual effect. And if there's like a cluster of them, then it's a really cool pattern on the wall. So they're making all the parts for this installation. So when they put them in the oven, it's a sphere. Once the glass cools down, they can take it into the cold shop and cut the sides of it off. So you can take the glass into what's called the cold shop, and it's kind of like a wood shop. You can grind and polish and cut the glass. So the hot shop is where you use the glass when it's hot, and the cold shop is where you polish the glass when it's cold. Our cold shop is on the other side of this area. So they'll take them once they cool down, and they'll finish up the shape, and then they'll become these pieces for the installation. So this is just an example of the end product. Yeah. And these are all the colors. So they're all transparent colors. Some of them look really dark, but that's just because it's all very condensed. They have little labels that tell you all the colors. But we've got like blues and reds and yellows and all kinds of colors. So we don't make these. There's a glass color and supply store where we buy these. There's chemists that specialize in glass color, and they make these for us, and we buy them at the store, and then we use them. So the clear glass is already molten in the furnaces. The colored glass is cold, so we have to preheat these before we can add them to the piece. So this big silver box here has all of the color bar, heating it up, keeping it hot, so that we can melt it the rest of the way and add it to the piece. So there's kind of multiple things going on right now. They've got a piece they're working on. All three benches are being used today. So the two main benches are these two over here. They'll have two separate bubbles that they'll smush together to make this inside part. And then while they're working on this part, another part of the team will be starting the next one for the two separate bubbles. So there's like 4 different moving parts for 2 pieces, because there's two parts for each one piece. So there's 4 different pipes with bubbles all happening at the same time. Any questions? Yeah. So that table is called a marver, and it's used for shaping and cooling the glass. So if you roll the glass across the table, it shapes it for you. The glass is too hot for you to touch to shape, so we use the table to shape it. And then it's made of, it's a steel top table, so the metal takes the heat out of the glass and cools it down. So it's for shaping and heating at the same time, or shaping and cooling at the same time, sorry. So when they're rolling it on that table, they're preparing it for the next part that they want to do. But yeah, you can see they've got the 2 separate bubbles that they're working on. They're going to blow those up into spheres, and then they're going to smash them together to make this little part on the inside. So they've been making these today. They just want to make as many as they can for the installation. But the furnace over there, Sarah in the blue shirt is getting glass out of the furnace right now. All the glass in the furnace is clear, but it looks orange when you take it out because of how hot it is. It sits in there at 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So it looks like lava because it is actually a couple hundred degrees hotter than most types of lava. But as the glass cools, it stops glowing and it stops moving, and it eventually stiffens up until it's just a solid piece of glass. So the big black box is called the annealing oven, and it's about 950 degrees. And at 950 degrees, the glass is actually cold and stiff.